We are not joking around here when we say that we have superior potential, right? And we can literally not only change the world, but create the world that we desire, that's within us. All right, it's time to get real, people. We're talking real stuff today. There's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear mongering and people that want to keep your mind in a prison. I'm talking about a prison for your mind. The prison, it starts here. Nobody has control over what you put in here, what you believe, what you feed. The beliefs and the paradigms, the situations that you encourage, that is what's going to rule your future, your situations, your circumstances, your life. There's a guy. He wanted to be a hockey player. We were all playing hockey in high school, and it turns out like he wasn't always that great. I mean, he was good and all. We played on the team, but it wasn't anything special. One day we were making fun of him in the locker room, and he looked at us and he's like, "You know what? Guys, I am gonna make it to the big leagues. I'm gonna be in the NHL." Never saw him again. 2 years later, he was playing in the NHL. What made him do it? Everything else after that point, he made a decision. He made a decision, and from that decision comes everything else. When you make a decision, it's all or nothing. That's when everything falls into place. Every single thing that came upon his path after that, every single choice that he had the potential to make, he asked himself, is it going to lead me towards this or away from this? Is it going to fulfill this vision I have or not? And he made it. He made it within a couple of years. He made it within a couple of years. That's how easy it is, folks. But you got to make the decision in here first. Like I say, give it to yourself in your mind, because if it's not in your mind, all the other events, all the other situations, everything else will not line up. It cannot line up because you will be continually looking for something other than what you say you're looking for. It's easy to say we want something. It's easy to say that we want it. Oh, I want to have a good life. I want to be in this kind of relationship. I want to have this kind of job. I want to have this kind of money. But when the opportunity comes up, we actually choose to go against ourselves. We actually choose to fight against that. Why? I don't know why. We have all sorts of baggage. For money, it might be, oh, rich people are snobs, or we act weird when we get a lot of money, or we lose all our friends, or power corrupts, and money corrupts even more. We have all these bullshit, ridiculous paradigms that we encourage when we say we want to encourage another thing. We say that we want money. We say that we want money, but the truth is that we want to be wanting money. Consistently wanting. Consistently saying that same old story, I want money. Listen, when this guy got into the NHL, it's because nothing else mattered. Every single decision that came upon his path, he asked himself, maybe subconsciously, but that decision was there. And he said, am I going to make it to the NHL if I do this? Or is this going to lead me away from that? Is it going to lead me away from that? And from there, everything turned out. Never give up hope. Never give up hope. Because as infinite potentials, as infinite human beings, we have imagination. That's what I say makes us infinite. We are plugged in to a sea of potential. And the way we download that sea, the way we see it with our eyes, our mind's eye, is through imagination. And through imagination, we make it real. And from that imagination, we can act on it. Situations and events can unfold and play out and lead us down that path. It doesn't just poof right into existence, but we download it as a complete vision here. And from there, our subconscious is able to take us through the next steps and the next steps and the next steps that will eventually, ultimately lead us to that potential. We have the potential to be the potential who we are. We have come here to be something, and that desire is within us. we're already born with the potential to realize this desire, and we do so through imagination. And by encouraging our imagination, we're encouraging the fulfillment of that imagination. It's one step leads to the next step leads to the next step, right? But we can't taste the fulfillment if we don't taste the possibility, if we don't even taste the idea. But trust, like actually trust, like there's no sense of being who you are when you have this amount of time, limited amount of time, and a limited amount of the possibilities of ideas, because you can only download ideas which you're on the level of, right? Sometimes ideas, you might get a flash of inspiration, but it might seem too impossible, right? So we're tuned in to that which we're kind of in the frequency range of. And it's up to us to choose a frequency that we'd prefer. A lot of people are just stuck in spiraling. That's why spiraling happens, is because you're stuck in a paradigm that just enforces doubt, or enforces fear, or enforces depression. You know, depression doesn't just start off. It's something that has been it's like a seed that has been watered and sprouted and seeded itself, and now it's turning into a little garden patch, right? We're growing garden patches here. And one little seedling, and if we sow a seedling of hope and visualizing for 15 minutes one day, you know, that will come up in its own little seed. But how many seeds are we planting all the time, consistently, and in our past, throughout our whole lifetime, right? What is this garden that we've been cultivating, right? We've got to plant the right seeds. We've got to plant seeds that we prefer. The more seeds we plant that we prefer, the more we'll be capable of perceiving the plants that are coming up which we prefer. You know, otherwise our garden's going to be overrun by weeds, and weeds seed themselves. It's like grass or any kind of invasive species just comes into your garden and just takes it over, right? We got to do the garden work in the dendrites, right? Dendrites, from the Greek word meaning trees. We have to tend to the trees. The nerves literally look like trees. This is the Garden of Eden. I won't get into that in this video. That's, sometimes I feel like if I reference the Bible and its symbolism, that's like opening up a can of worms, because you just have the haters come in and the literalists come in, but they're not realizing that it's talking about you and not some grandfather that you inherited the punishment of. Punishment, you're only on the realm of being punished if you're on that level of pleading guilty. That's why the church capitalizes on guilt. They capitalize on feeding people a narrative that keeps them down and in guilt and in shame and feeling bad about normal human processes. You know, the very thing that we're isolating ourselves from is our sensuality, but our senses is what makes us human. That's what makes us human. We can't ignore the senses, the drives, the passions, the desires that we're born with. I'm not just talking low-based sexual fantasies. I'm talking about the desires that we have, our potentials that will pull us towards a greater end. We are, as beings, experiencers of difference of potential. If you know, like electric current, it's always seeking to ground itself, but it's seeking to ground itself in stages. So it's going from one charge to a lesser charge to a more equal charge to a more equal charge. And that's what it is. That's what we are. We are realizing ourselves as fuller fulfillments of who we are, what we are as these aware beings of crystallized consciousness. That's ultimately what it's coming down to. We are not joking around here when we say that we have superior potential, right? And we can literally not only change the world, but create the world that we desire, that's within us. That is within us. It is within us, wishing to be born. It's gestating in our real talk here, real talk, people, real talk. The desires within us are really there. We're born with this. Call it a soul contract, call it a predisposed, pre-decided knowingness, decision, God-given talent, right? For the reason of that God knows how fate will unfold and what decisions we're capable of. Ultimately, I believe that we're capable of making our own decisions, but the events that present themselves, they're not always in our control, and I don't need to go into that. We all recognize that things happen around us that, despite our best efforts, sometimes we're led in a different direction. Why is that, right? If intention is such a driving force in this world, how is it that we are able to even perceive a possibility of experiencing something that we do not want, right? But it's how we handle those situations where the real power lies. It's how we really take those situations. It's how we really take those situations and turn them into gold. Turn them into gold, right? Alchemy. Whether you like it or not, situations can totally flip. And the truth is that many times, we don't want them to flip because we're comfortable, and it's what we know, and it's how we're doing things. We're not changing things. We don't want to see it change because it's kind of serving us, right? But I had started to implement visualizing, having my own business, having a community of artists. I started envisioning my family getting along much more. Like, my family always kind of got along. I started just putting that in my visualizing. Literally, how I visualize is I will go into imagination in a meditative state, and I have an idea of what I want. Many times I can go in with a script in particular, but I've arrived at that script. This is how I do it. I go into a meditative state and I intend to visualize a certain scene. So say the scene is me working, for myself, for having a business. So I would go in and I would have a premise. Me working from home is the idea, on my computer, say, or doing some shipping, and I would have a conversation maybe with my girlfriend who's there next to me, maybe bringing me something to drink or something, I don't know. Make it as interactive as I can without limiting the potential on a logical, conscious level. And or say, like, at the post office, I would be having a conversation with the teller or clerk or cashier or whatever you call them. Postal workers. But I would have a video of that, or a video in my mind, mind you, of that, and I would really go in with the possibility to repeat it, but change the iterations as my inner guidance led me. So I would add to it, I would take out from it. Sometimes the scene might change and the setting might change, but the dialogue would stay the same. Or, a lot of times the dialogue is, everything is tweaked by the inner guidance, but I don't do anything logically. Many times something will come up and I'm like, whoa, that is really pushing the envelope of what I perceive as being possible in the present moment. But at the same time, I know that then, even if I think about it, I know that the awareness is pulling me in a direction that's showing me, hey, Joel, this is a possibility, and I can take you down this path if you allow me the greatness of this potentiality unfolding in the universe. The universe is ultimately a sea of grand potentials. Like, that's why it says things like greater than we can ask or think, because even though we're thinking it, even though we're asking it, even though we have conveyed this desire to the greater awareness, to the higher supreme force of all that is, we are communicating that on a conscious level, but that subconscious can jump in and really fill in those gaps. And I'm not saying that that's the greatness that will be realized when we're visualizing these things and we get a spark of inspiration. I'm saying it's going to be the greatness of experience when these things unfold in our reality without any kind of explanation as to the possibility of how did this line up in such a way. Coincidence? The only reason that humans have for these things is coincidence. There is no coincidence. Every time you see a coincidence, that is somebody who has manifested something in their experience most of the time. In fact, I would say because nobody's taught this, nobody really knows that they might take it as a coincidence, and they might realize the connection that the thoughts that they had lined up with the situation, but most people don't even go that far. I was working with one guy that had to get stitches, and he said to me, the ironic thing is that just the night before I had a thought about stitches and getting stitches, and I saw a video on that. And I'm like, are these things premonitions, or did he let it brew in his subconscious without knowing? I worked with this guy, and the more I got to know him, the more I realized he's not in tune with this aspect of himself, but he has real power, because what he's saying and what he's feeling is really going to play out in his experience as his experience of reality. And no judgment, because probably when I was his age, I was there too. I was a very not negative but sarcastic person, in a negative, condescending. I would use profanity a lot without realizing that I was cursing certain things. There's a different use, and I'm not saying sometimes profanity is utilizational. It's utilizable. Sometimes you can use it to great effect as a writer, right? But it seems like every business book title they've gotten onto the swearing bit of life, and every single title has it doesn't work, you know. That doesn't work. But there's a I don't know, maybe I'm getting on a tangent here, but what I'm just trying to say that there is a smart use for profanity that's very what's the literary term when it's very fitting for the situation at hand? I'm totally lost for that word, but whatever, it's still a tangent. Guys, what's removed from your life for a reason, in a choice that you cannot control, in situations that you just can't control, what's removed from your experience during those moments when no matter what you do, no matter what you do, it's like you're meeting up against a wall. There's a wall right there, and even though you tried to stick to the path you thought, the universe is taking you down a different path. Situations unfolded at IKEA that I just ended up being removed in spirit. So the universe, I made the decision actually one day. I was like, you know what, there's no way I'm going back to this place because of how they treated me that day. They were treating everybody under the stress they were under, granted, because of this whole situation, but they were treating people like you wouldn't believe that day. And I said, you know what, this is not for me. I've had a business, I know how to treat people, and if this is how IKEAns act under stress, then this just is it's just revealing an aspect more of the community which I've joined as an employee, more of that community which was just under the rug, but it's there, you know. Like this whole pandemic, this whole lockdown, this whole, you know, it's brought out the worst in society, and by bringing it to the surface, we have to address it one way or another, you know. People have to make sense of it in their old noodle, in their old noggin. That's ultimately what this is liberating us. How this whole situation is liberating us. We are being led in a way that just brings out the, you know, it brings out some of the hardest aspects of us to deal with, and it's just been a rough ride for many of us. It's been a rough ride for many of us, so we're sticking through, guys. We're sticking through, you know. We're sticking through. This is big boy talk here. It's been a long ride, guys. It's been a long ride. I've been to private school after private school. I've been homeschooled, and I've been through the high school drama in a private school. I've been through college as someone that definitely wasn't prepared for anything outside of a sheltered one classroom school, and I had to face college, and I didn't do so well. And then I had to get a job, but I got the job easily. It's the awareness we have within us that manifests some of these things easily and some of these things not. I wasn't coming from a wealthy family. I never came from money, which is why I really feel the change that visualizing and implementing these changes has brought me, just in being in these living in a new neighborhood, and like how jobs unfold and how my business unfolds and how the community around us, not just this channel but all these channels and all this awareness is just blossoming forth. I really feel the impact, and that's why I share these videos. This isn't my main thing. Like, my main thing is the arts, my main thing is music, my main thing is visual arts. I really am into that, and I'm really active in that. So like, these videos take up a lot of time, but it's something that I'm just led to do for the greater, and of course my art is for the greater, and there's a whole reason why I allowed that to flow through. That's part of how I woke up. That's part of how I woke up and realized my potential as a creative individual. I realized that I was a creative, and I've always have been, but I was told that I had to make money. I was told that I had to work. I was told that I had to get good at skills. So I saw that, the interpretation of that in a logical sense, as architecture. And I loved some of the architects from the early 1900s, and a lot of, I just love architecture in general. It's one of the arts that I absolutely love. But perhaps I had to go through that to ruin that avenue because of just how much work is involved in it, and that the business is so, I have more potential, I feel, in the other realms. But at the same time, I don't want to say this is what the universe has given me, and that's that, and there's no more potential outside of that. I'm not giving the universe anything outside. Who knows, it might make a comeback. My art might be the next big thing. I don't know. I don't know. I might be a chef one day. Who knows? But I really think that we can make a difference in the world. We can really make a difference in the world. We can really make a difference in the world. And we make that difference in our minds first, so that we give ourselves the possibility. I could say, okay, an example. I could say, you know what? I want to get rid of taxes, so I'm going to go and just stop taxes. This is how I'm going to do it. I can visualize that, but for the events to unfold, they're going to be unfolding outside of me, and for the most part, I'm not going to be one of the activists on the forefront taking the action in a physical sense. So we got to understand first and foremost how manifestation works, and how we can use it to our advantage, right? And not to get in the way of it, because it's not a poof out of thin air and poof, I'm going to be this. It's a development. It's opening up ourselves to the development that makes the development then easy.